hello. Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Sharon, aka the Melanin Nostalgic Runner, and we are reviewing for the first time a new Housewives show. Yes, I decided to do the review for the show. It was a very good first episode. I enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace, and yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised. So let's get into it. This is for the Real Housewives of Rhode Island. This is season 1, episode 1. It's called Welcome to Rhode Island. And yes, of course, you see that I'm not on camera right now, but I have a lot of shows to review. I still got to do the Real Housewives of Atlanta, and I actually have to do the second episode of the Real Housewives of Rhode Island because I think it aired on Sunday this time. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if they have a dedicated day for the show. I think what they're doing right now is they're trying to have it lead another show. So that actually makes sense for me because I think Married to Medicine is over with now. So they're probably having Rhode Island lead after Real Housewives of Atlanta to kind of help with the ratings and help get the show going. But anyway, we have a lot to discuss because everyone's new here. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. So we start off, we meet up with Alicia. And Alicia, Alicia. I'll get the names down. I will. This again is the first episode. We meet her and we also meet her husband, Billy. And I guess she has a daughter who's kind of like her twin. Her name is Selena. And we find out that she is Italian as all get out. That is something that is very similar to New Jersey. But I do see that there definitely is a difference. It's similar, but it's not the same. To me, at least watching the first episode, what I gathered is kind of like I feel like it's gonna be a similar situation where New Jersey and Rhode Island will never be on at the same time. Similar to how like Potomac and Atlanta will never be on at the same time. They're very similar because they're both like the black shows, but at least in this case, both of them are the Italian housewife shows, so they're not going to be on at the same time. So that actually makes sense, and they're both like East Coast based shows. So yeah. But anyway, so but I actually like this. Like so far, I like the episode. I liked it more than I like New Jersey, but maybe it's because everyone's new. And also too, we have a nice mix of girls. Like we have women who are in like we have a woman like one of the housewives, she's like 31, so we have a really young housewife, and then we have some that I believe are in their 50s, or close to that. So it's a nice range. But anyway, this first person, Elisa, we find out that her husband owns a whole bunch of restaurants. A lot of the people own like restaurants and stuff. But anyway, one of the restaurants they own is called Pizza Mama, I guess, or Mama. And again, she mentions the Italian family, and she originally lived in Canton, but they moved to Providence, Rhode Island, and like we do actually meet some of her extended family because they head to her house, and the whole entire time her extended family is complaining about how far away they live. They only live 15 minutes away. But for how small Rhode Island is, that actually makes sense. They probably are used to like, things not being too far away. So, but one thing I noticed, the other thing that we also find out is at least she's not married. You know what? I think I said husband originally, and that was like maybe like a Freudian slip. They've been together for some time now, but for 9 years. They've been engaged for 9 years. And it seems like they are not in a hurry to get married. And honestly, if it's not broke, why fix it? But one thing I did notice in this first episode, she kind of reminds me, and I will say this, she's kind of ditzy. Not in a bad way. She kind of reminds me of, I would say, who I would compare her to, but not quite the same because I don't think she is messy intentionally. She reminds me of Teresa Giudice a little bit. Just a little bit when it comes to the ditziness of it all. She doesn't look like her, but she does remind me of her. Also, another side note that I am a little concerned about as I'm watching this show, everyone's a brunette. So I feel like I might have a problem where everyone looks alike, but really there's only 2 people that look like on this show that are twinning, and you saw the thumbnail. So yeah. Anyway, but that's a little bit about her. And really, this first episode was an intro to most of the girlies with a little bit of drama sprinkled in there. And there's a couple women on the show that are definitely some troublemakers. And so far, I do have an opinion on who I, am liking and who I'm like got my good eye on, and we'll talk about that. But anyway, yeah, that's a little bit about the first lady. Let's get into the next scene. So speaking of Campton, then we end up going to Liz's house. And Liz, what I put in parentheses right away is that is Dolores' twin. That's Dolores, that's Black Dolores from New Jersey's twin. Literally. And we meet her husband, Gary, and we find out she doesn't have any children of her own, but she basically inherited all his stepchildren. I mean, all his children. So she is a stepmom. We also find out that she and her husband, they're in the cannabis industry. They own a cannabis dispensary. They're one of the first to have one on the East Coast, and it's called Slater. And it seems like they are very involved in that industry. We also find out later on, let's kind of skip ahead a little bit here, because we do find out that, well, for those who didn't already know, Black Dolores is a friend of the show. And of course, who's she friends with? Liz, aka her twin. And yes, they really do look alike. Like, it's ridiculous how much you look like. But we find out they went to the same surgeon, like plastic surgeon. They've got their teeth done at the same place. So yeah, it's giving. It kind of reminds me of Larsa and Kim Kardashian and that kind of thing. But anyway, that is a little bit about Liz. One thing I will say, my first impression of her is she is the matriarchy of the group. She's going to be someone who's fair. She reminds me of Karen, but not as delusional. Like the type that basically is just going to, try to keep the peace, that kind of thing. That's who she reminds me of the most so far as I'm watching this. But yeah, we'll see more about her. But I did like her. My first impression of her is I really did like her. But later on this episode, well, not that much later on, right away after we meet her and we're at her house, we actually see that she ends up going to another town called West Greenwich. And basically, she has like a boat off the dock. Like her house also is huge and immaculate. We see that she ends up taking a boat to meet Kelsey. And Kelsey is the youngest of the women on this show. And they meet up for drinks. And right here, when we meet Kelsey, she then lets us into her life. And we find out she's a sugar baby. And she's the one who has some controversy to her already. Now, do I think she's a sweet girl so far? Yes, but she definitely is young. She's 31, and she basically is a sugar baby, but she is getting to the point in her life where she's sick of that lifestyle. Because what we also find out is that she is in a relationship where it's open, which actually, I found this immediately refreshing, because on these shows, we never get into the things. They always be trying to put on postures about the monogamy of it all. And basically, she's letting her man, in the words of Alexander Rogers, cheat in peace. Because they're not really cheating. It's an open relationship. So they're in, I guess they're in the poly. And, but so far in this first episode, we're mainly hearing that he's the one that has other girlfriends. Like, apparently he has a girlfriend in Miami. And also, too, the other thing that we notice on this show is we don't see a picture of this man. There's pictures of them together, but he's like, blurred out. Or they cut his face out. So we don't actually see what this man looks like. But basically, if it's because of him, she lives in a 16,000 square foot place, basically a mansion. Like, not even a mansion. It looks like a castle. It looks like a compound compared to where everyone else lives. And she basically gets to enjoy this lifestyle. And then we also find out because of him, she was able to enter pageant. So she does pageants apparently. So she won Miss Rhode Island. And so that was a big deal for her. She said if it wasn't for her man, she wouldn't even try to get into that. So she has grown up a lot with this man. And so, but she is sick of sharing him. And so now she is with that hard decision of do I keep this lifestyle that she knows is going to be hard for her to maintain on her own and sacrifice what she really wants long term as far as settling down, or does she stay in this lifestyle? I mean, or does she leave this lifestyle and start over? And that's where she's at. And I do so far like Kelsey because I've been there. Not quite that extreme version of it, but where you've tried different relationships and you think that will work for you until you realize that's not going to work for you. I had a time in my life where I was with a man who basically was like, just work enough to kind of, pay for food or whatever, but like I didn't have to pay for anything really. And I was actually almost engaged to this person, and I just after a while just realized that was not for me. I'm way too much of an independent spirit for that to be a thing. And I kind of lost myself in that relationship, and that's what we're seeing right now. We see that this woman, she is completely lost in her relationship, and it usually hits you around your 30s when you realize, oh, I can't keep doing this thing. Because I feel like for me, that was probably about 34, 35 when I finally realized this isn't for me. And it wasn't quite this extreme case of it, but I also had a similar situation in my 20s where I was dating someone and we were pretty serious. We were on and off for years. And it was a very toxic situation, long story less long. But there was a time where we were open, and I also realized that lifestyle also is not for me. So I totally get where she's coming from, but unfortunately we're seeing her in the crux of it. And so her insecurities with her relationship is very obvious. And I do feel a way as I'm watching this first episode about some of the people who are judging it. We'll get into it when we get into it. But yeah, so that's kind of what we get from Kelsey. But the matriarchy who has her back, who's really, really close to her, is actually Liz. And that's kind of where we get this story. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so then next we meet Joe Ellen. And Joe Ellen and her husband Gary, they're spelled different. Both there's more than one Gary, but they're spelled differently. This Gary is spelled like Gary, Indiana. But anyway, they're having dinner together, and we find out that they met in high school. She was a freshman while he was a senior, and she did everything she could to win this man. And I will also say one more thing. Kelsey, the way she was talking, and I felt so bad for her, but I just hope she can get out of this in one way or another. Is oh man, like I hate. Well, I don't hate. I have a tough time because I've been removed from that situation, and I know for those who've been on my channel, y'all know I can get judgy when it comes to these type of situations that Kelsey's in. But I understand it. Don't get it twisted. I do understand it, but I hope she does get past that mentality of having, because she kind of is. She has a little bit of a pick me attitude, but you kind of have to in order to be in that kind of a lifestyle. You can't be. You sacrifice being independent, and you essentially sacrifice yourself. I feel like a lot of times when you are in that lifestyle, especially if it's not a lifestyle you're really into for real. And she's growing out of it, so she's not really into it for real. So it does make things very difficult. But anyway, I just want to add more to that. But we do find out though that Joellen, she is a little bit of a spitfire. She's a little bit of a spitfire. And we also find out that Kelsey, who we just talked about, and Liz, those are her best friends. Those are her ride or dies. And she basically said, I don't tell me secrets unless you don't want anyone to know about it, because she's going to tell Kelsey and she's going to tell Liz. I don't think Liz is normally the one that tells people, but Kelsey probably does. Who knows? But they're in a small state. So I feel like news travels fast, just because just the size radius of where they're at. But the other thing that we find out about Joellen is she has 3 kids and she's busy. It's like she has a 1 year old, she has a 3 year old, and by the way, she looks amazing for just having a 1 year old. And she also has a 10 year old. And then we also find out that she is in the med spa industry. And by the way, of how she is in the med spa slash plastic surgery industry, is that she sells the products to said med spas and or plastic surgeons or estheticians, like the equipment, not like the not product as in like like the care stuff, but like the actual equipment itself. And she loves being an independent girly as a result of that. And so but the thing that we do find out about Joellen is she is tell like it is, very much tell like it is, blunt, can come across as a jerk. um I will say this. I kind of do like her though. I go hold you. She's my kind of girly because she does not come off sensitive at all. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of similar to her. I don't know what her sign was, but I do like her so far. But we'll see as the season progresses if I change my mind. But that's a little bit more about Joellen. All right, so then the next girlie that we meet Rosie. And from what I gather, I don't think Rosie's from Rhode Island, but we don't really know much about her. What we learned though is that she meets up with Alicia, and she used to be a TV news anchor, and her husband name is Rich, and apparently he just does a whole bunch of hobbies. Um, I do question, as I was watching this episode, I was like, okay, is the money funny? I have some questions. I ain't gonna hold you. I did have some questions. Since she was being judgy, I was being judgy back to her a little bit because she did mention she's a Taurus, but I was like, what kind of Taurus is she? Because she was giving messy boots. I would need to see what the rest of her birth chart is because I feel like Tauruses are usually not as messy as she was. But we'll get into that when we get into that. But we also find out besides her being former news anchor, she does a lifestyle show. And then she started spreading some rumors. I don't know, she was talking to Elite. She's the one who brought it up saying that Joellen is a swinger. And this is where I'm immediately getting I'm putting things on pause right now because I'm just kind of like, this is not the first nor will be the last time where Rosie is all in the business of what people are doing in their bedroom. And I am very confused why she cares about that so much. It's weird. And if Joe Ellen's into that, more to it. Like, more power to her. Like I said, I live me some lives. I'm not into it today, but I can understand, if that's your thing, that's your thing. No judgment. So again, that's why I was just like, I think Joe Ellen's my kind of girl. Because she has lived some lives and I respect it. But anyway, yeah, so that's a little bit about them. And then also as they were talking, they're outside and they were doing this activity where they're walking with like these weird shoes, like they were like these platform shoes where it's supposed to help with your balance and stuff like that. I don't know what they were doing, but anyway, that's kind of a little bit. We learned a little about Rosie, but we kind of they're planting the seeds that Rosie's messy boots. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so the next, Rosie ends up having an event. And we also find out before this event happens when she's talking to Elise that her and Joellen, they are butting heads. Like, she basically thinks that Joellen's mean, and I we'll get into it when we get to this next event, but yeah. Anyway, so she is filming her lifestyle show. Before she ends up having her actual event where she invites the ladies to have basically like a beach lunch with her. And she's coining it as a luxury lunch. But they ran out of champagne. And the champagne was not champagning. I'm just saying. And we hear about it more than once in this episode. I feel like Rosie and Rich's Rich, who doesn't seem like he really has a job for real, is given the money is funny. But anyway, we'll get more into it. But Joellen and Alicia, they show up, and then Ashley joins them, and this actually happens to be Rosie's friend. And we find out this is where we get a little bit more about Ashley. Ashley is married to Jared, and they met on The Bachelor. Um, I don't know what version of The Bachelor, but they met. It was love at first sight, and they actually got married based off the show. And they've been married for 6 years. They have a 1-year old and 3-year old. And she is originally from Virginia, and you could tell because she's like her and Rosie do not have an accent. So you could definitely tell they are not from Rhode Island. Everyone else definitely has a hard Rhode Island accent. And side note, I just have to shout this out. Shout out to my girlfriend, one of my good friends, that was like, you better be reviewing this show. I will let her know that I'm reviewing the show. She's originally from Rhode Island, so she was like, you better be reviewing this show because she's a Housewives fan too. So anyway, shout out to her. Anyway, so then immediately, and I was actually trying to go back to see how this came about, but Joellen and Rosie start talking about Kelsey and what they have going on. And I think how it came about was I thought Rosie was the one who asked how Kelsey's doing. I don't think it was the other way around. But later on the episode, Rosie spins it and says that that Joellen brought that up. And I was giving I don't trust it. I don't trust it. So at this point, now it gets kind of weird very quickly because now Rosie is just asking all these questions about Kelsey without Kelsey being there, but they're very embracive, extremely personal questions. And the thing is, it would be one thing if Joellen and Rosie were friends. They're not. They're still just trying to get to know each other. And Joellen, you could tell right here and there, Joellen is clearly annoyed and she almost wants to say, mind your effing business. She doesn't say it out loud. She actually is keeping it cute. And at this point in time, I was like, this is why Joellen doesn't like her. And I would be on the same side as Joellen. I would not like her either. Why are you asking all these questions about my friend? She ain't even here. Like, what is this? This is weird. It was giving weirdo energy. I ain't gonna hold you. And Rosie just kept making the point to talk about Kelsey as if she was there. It was really weird. And so now Joellen is just calling her out for being an asshole and like wanting to know too much information. And Rosie in her confessional, she's like, well, I was a former news reporter. What do you expect from me? And then out of nowhere, she starts crying and playing the victim and spinning it. And right then there, I was like, okay, this is something I would not be able to take. Right then there, I was like, yeah, I don't think I like Rosie. I don't think I like Rosie at all. And Joellen, she's like, okay, let me try to keep the peace. I'm having a 4th of July party. This is the olive branch. Because what the other thing that happened was Rosie tries to spin it around and say, well, I heard you were talking about me first. And she's crying. And I'm just like, what is this crying about? I don't know. I would have immediately checked out when you started crying on me because I wouldn't have even felt bad. I'm sorry. This nothing burger of a fight and you're crying. Sorry. You can see how I like Joellen already. Yeah, I'm kind of like her because I'm just like, dude, you are crying over this. So anyway, they make peace for the moment. And we find out that Joellen is going to be having a 4th of July party. And we also find out how much 4th of July is a very big deal in Rhode Island, which makes sense because, I mean, they're close to Massachusetts, so I get how it would be a big deal. But anyway, moving on. Oh, so the other thing that came up during the argument I forgot to mention is that Joellen called out Rosie for bringing $6 wine to an event that they had, and Rosie felt offended that she threw that in her face. And honestly, though, I agree with Joe Ellen. Yeah, no. What are we doing? Why are you bringing me cheap wine? That's disgusting. Like, are we in college? Like, I'm sorry. Also, this is Housewives, so let's be so for real. Anyway, so that kind of got brought up, but I forgot to mention that. But on to the next scene. We see that Ashley ends up meeting Jarrett, her husband, at their coffee house, Audrey. Yeah, it's called Audrey. And basically we find out his work-life balance isn't really work-life balancing because they don't really make money from this coffee shop, but this is kind of a passion project to his. They actually make money from them both being influencers because of them being on reality shows before. But I guess Jarrett was sick of that type of a thing, and so he wanted to switch it up, and now they have a coffee house. And apparently he was working, at one point in time he was working 100 hours a week. And with them having two little ones, he did make the adjustments. But Ashley starts crying because she's just like, I want you to be happy. You don't come off as happy. And it's like, Ashley, he's working. I'm sorry, but Ashley was just kind of, oh gosh, I just can't do I don't know. Jared to me was cracking me up because he was on the side of Joellen, because she mentioned like, yeah, like Joellen according to her is really mean, because he's recapping Jared on what happened between Joellen and Rosie. And he was like, yeah, I wouldn't have brought that cheap wine to an event either, though. I was like, yeah, that part, that's in poor taste. So yeah, but anyway, so we did find that out about them, and yeah, that's a little bit for when it comes to that. On to the 4th of July event, apparently. All right, so then we have our first Housewives montage, since we kind of got to know most of the ladies at first. We basically hear from Joellen. She's getting ready for the party. And then we also meet her mom, and her mom is coming to watch the kids because this is not a kids friendly party. And we also find out that her and Gary are going, they're doing this event, not at their house. They rented a spot to do this at. So they're all heading over there. We also do get a little bit of an Easter egg of Joellen and her mom not having the best relationship. I'm sure as the season progressed, we'll get into that. So she was kind of extra nervous about her mom watching the kids. And she also shares in this episode that, she knows that her kids are in good hands, but she still has a lot of residual issues related to how she was raised. So we are definitely going to get into that this season for sure. But anyway, they're on their way to the event, and they talk about Rosie. And she's just like, I'm trying to turn a new leaf. We'll see. Hopefully Rosie's in her best behavior. And of course, her husband has her back. And then in the other car, we see Rosie, Ashley, and their husbands. They're on their way there. And yeah, I'm still not sure, what does this man do for a living? Rich. It seems like he don't really, according to her, when they were doing the influencer thing, he's her assistant. I don't know. He's given he ain't got a job. But yeah, there's that. Anyway, so then as they are we do, after the Housewives montage and we see the ladies, getting ready to get there. We see that Alicia and Bill arrive first, and Alicia, she is just kind of ditzy looking around like, where is everybody? There's people there. She's just like, the cast ain't there yet. They're the first ones there. And then Liz and her husband Gary, they show up with Polly and Dolores. And that's where we get the twins twinning. And we find out that she was invited to stay at Rhode Island for the summer. So they have a rental for the summer, and Delois is officially the friend of the show. So that's kind of nice to see her. She didn't really add much this first episode, but we'll see how things progress. I think only thing that Dolores did was she kind of helped move things along a little bit, but we'll see how the rest of this goes. But anyway, so then Joel briefs Kelsey on what's going on, because Kelsey, again, she wasn't at that party, and Kelsey is immediately in her feelings, and she gets emotional immediately. And Dolores is like, is there a reason why you're so emotional? And we find out that, I mean, we already knew this from when we were talking to her before, but like her relationship is like literally that's a weak spot for her. So someone bringing that up seems intentional and seems like a dig. And I agree. I think it is too. Like, you doing that's some nasty work, especially if you guys aren't really friends like that. Anyway, so then Alicia and Kels, like, basically, everyone starts getting there one by one. And Joe Ellen at first was not even going to go to like greet Rosie, even though she invited Rosie. And it seems like Dolores had to push her along, like, girl, you have to introduce yourself. Like, and so I will say, when it came to the actual event, the event seemed nice, but that was rude of Joellen to not want to make sure she introduces herself to everyone, because she had some of the ladies just kind of there for a while and she didn't even go to them yet. She did eventually go to Rosie, and Rosie brought these fireworks. Cheap fireworks, by the way, and $60 bottle of champagne. Cheap. And so she's not she's not helping with these allegations. The money might be funny, and it's just, I don't know. The gifts are not giving. And Joe Ellen's like, yeah, I wouldn't have done that. Yeah. So that kind of landed flat. So as all this is happening, Kelsey's just getting more and more bothered because she wants to talk to Rosie about things, and she finally does end up talking to her, but it kind of gets cut short. And then this is when Rosie tries to flip it and say that Joe Ellen was the one who brought it up, and she makes herself come across like she wasn't the one who was really, being nosy and kind of being messy. And so now Kelsey, because she's so insecure, she doesn't know who to trust. And we find out towards the end of the episode that this is just a thing in Rhode Island. Everybody talks about each other, and there's a lot of skeletons that are going to be exposed. And we also find out towards the end of the episode, my thoughts of Rosie was correct. She is trying to stir stuff on purpose, and she is trying to get back. It's just, it's not looking the way it should look. But maybe I'll find out later on, and as the season progresses, why she's trying to get back, and maybe I'll switch how I feel about it. But right now, I don't really see it for Rosie. But anyway, that is the season premiere. It was a really good first episode. I'm looking forward to watching the second episode, which I'm about to watch right now. I'm going to edit this video and then watch the second episode and then record the next video. I actually won't be a video, but again, listen to this as a podcast. You'll be okay. But anyway, that does conclude my review. Please like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you get anything out of this content. It's your girl Sharon, aka the Melanin Nostalgic Runner, and I will see you next time. Bye.